Michael Walsh, welcome back, Paper Napkin Wisdom, and we're part of this ongoing series, and we're like, this is really amazing stuff. We are discussing the freedom growth plan, freedom in the business to do the things we want to do, freedom from the business so we can go away and, have a vacation. I took 14 years before I took a vacation in my first business, in my first years of business. This is about not doing that. And freedom because of the business, freedom that you can live your life uh, because of the opportunities that your business opens up for you. So, in getting all those things, it was about effectively rethinking the biggest opportunity and the biggest challenge in every organization that creeps up through the four danger zones: people. And in rethinking it, people are part of the core, and part of the role of the organization is not just to generate profit, not just to generate results for the customer, but also to provide personal, professional development for the team, for the people actually doing the job. And in our last episodes, in our most recent episodes, we talked about how that looks, what training really looks like, what that development plan looks like, or starts to look like. And we sort of got into a growth plan before we took a left turn in our last episode. But today we're going to get in to developing a career plan, or a career development growth plan, correct?
Right.
All right. So on this napkin, you've got really, I mean, this is one of the sparser napkins for people who are following along. This napkin has really got four big points on it. It's all about them, longer range goals, 10 years, superpower and kryptonite, and learning over the next 3 years. So there's two time frames. Let's talk about what this really means. What is a career development growth plan?
It's a series of questions.
Series of questions. Okay.
That's all it is. And there are 10 questions in it. Okay. And one of the things that I've been mercilessly heckled about was having napkins that I might actually need, like, I don't know, a roll of toilet paper to deal with rather than just a simple napkin. So there are 10 questions in this.
I have not been merciless.
No, you've not. You've actually been playful about it. That's been kind of fun.
Yeah,
But the heckling continues.
it
So
does.
yeah, and even the eye roll when you're saying, well, this one's light comparatively speaking, whereas some of the other people can actually, that I've seen you do these tape rack with them, they can actually have one comment and it's actually got such depth but that's because those people are geniuses. And for this stuff, you're left with me. So we're gonna have to deal with what we got. There are 10 questions, and the truth of why you did not get the 10 questions on the napkin is because when I'm writing on a napkin, I continue to make mistakes, and I go through 6 or 8 napkins to get one that works because I can't write on a piece of paper that keeps moving on me. So I thought, you know what, I'm giving you 4 things, you're getting a high level, and that's what we're working with today. How's you okay with that?
I'm totally good with that.
Big goods. But what I will do though is I will actually work through each of the questions that we deal with.
Okay. Let's start at the top. It's all about them.
Okay, so when we look at, yeah, like people, when they're in an expertise-based industry or business, they're part of the exchange of value for them is they not only get compensated, but they do want professional growth. And they don't just want it when they're coming out of school or in their first job. Somebody who's a 10 or 15 or 20-year veteran in that industry, quite often they get resigned to the fact that they aren't growing anymore, but they just look for a job that's either more enjoyable or that gives them more opportunities to contribute to others or something, because quite too often they're not actually growing. My attitude is all the way through people's careers, if you can actually create the environment where they can grow, you continue to keep their attention and you're actually keeping your part of the deal. The deal with
Mm.
them is that you not only pay them well, but they actually have a chance to grow. And in addition to that, they have a chance to do meaningful work and develop meaningful relationships. So all 4 of those are true through all parts of somebody's career. And the key to the whole thing is the professional growth. And so we have this thing called a growth plan. And what we talked about last time is if we can actually overlay the growth plan onto the job role, then you can actually focus on one thing, not two, as an owner or a senior manager or a leader to support people. So it doesn't take a bunch of extra time. It does take thinking, but it doesn't, other than initially, it doesn't take a bunch of extra time to do this stuff. Initially, it does take a little bit extra time, but it's what I find is it's time well invested. So I have a question for you, Govind.
Mhm.
How many organizations do you know that have at least one or two or three people that are making between 80,000 and say 200,000 a year?
Um, Many.
Many. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's not uncommon, is it?
No.
Okay. How many are making 50 to 80,000? Is there lots of those too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then there's probably even some that are making 40 or 50. I mean, these days, sometimes that's an entry level type position.
Mhm.
So the lowest I might be looking at might be 40,000. Would that be fair?
Absolute lowest. Yeah.
And it depends on what country. In Canada, the USA, that would be the lowest. In the UK, a 40,000 pound a year role is actually a decent role.
Yes, absolutely.
They might start them at anywhere from 18,000 to 25,000 at the, pounds per year at the low end, but it goes up from there. But if so I'm just going to pick on, say, 60K a year. So if somebody's making 60,000 a year, is it worth investing a couple of hours once or twice with them?
No brainer.
Right. But if I have 12 people like that, it means I have to put anywhere from 2 to 4 hours times each of my 12 people. Like this starts adding up, half a day times 12 people, that's six full days. Like, doesn't that sound like too much?
It sounds like a lot. Yeah. For a lot of people. I mean, the idea of 6 days all at once, that's a lot of time.
Well, yeah, and so 6 days all at once. But if I've got 6 days and I've got an average of 60,000, that's $720,000 of payroll. If I put in 6 days for 700,000 plus in payroll, and that doesn't even count like the payroll taxes and employee benefits and all the other stuff, I'm probably up somewhere between 820 and 900,000 in payroll just if everybody's at 60. Heaven forbid I have people that are at 80 or 110 or things like that. Okay, so all of a sudden, 2 to 4 hours spent with each person. So here's the thing: I may not have it all in one week. But who says I have to do this all in one week? What if I
Right.
spread it out over 3 months? 3 months is 12 weeks or 13 weeks. And so I can do this one a week for the next 12 weeks and I take the 13th week off. Right. So on the
Right.
one hand, it sounds like, and people think I have to do it all at once. Oh, I can't do it all at once. So this idea makes no sense. But you said that it's a no-brainer to do it once for one person. Well, what if I did it with that one person? Then I slowly sort of evolved and teased it out. And then I actually taught a couple of my mid-level or higher level people to do it with their people. But again, one at a time over a period of several weeks. Is the time concern still there if I did it that way?
No, the time concern isn't there. The results concern is there because once you, if you're like me, once you start getting the value, you want all of the value. Like I want to accelerate it. I want this now. I'm all in.
So somebody once told me that, you can have anything you want over a decade. You can have anything you want. Okay. Do you have an extensive science background?
Not extensive.
Okay.
I'm geeky.
You are geeky. How about physics? Are you deep in physics?
No, not deep in physics.
Okay. And so do you know that you could actually become a nuclear physicist within a decade?
That
You
is the career path. Yeah, that is the study path.
you might actually have to go back and do, a master's in physics, or you might actually have to go do an undergrad in physics or in biology, and then combine it with a master's in physics, and then go and do your PhD in nuclear physics. And if you add those up collectively, it's about 10 years. There's a little bit of overlap on things here and there, but that takes about 10. Now, could you do that and be the brilliant star of Paper Napkin Wisdom? Probably not. I mean, you can do anything. You just can't do everything because there's too much everything and not enough time and not enough of you to go around. That's a matter of choosing what you want to deal with. So I got that you want to accelerate everything and do it all yesterday. Clear. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Not to be sustainable. And remember, even when we talk back about the results that you want to generate in the company, you want to generate the technical results, the financial results, the human results. But the fourth one was just as critical. The sustainability of those results is just as important as all the rest of it. Because if it's not sustainable, I don't have something that's going to last. And if I don't have something that's going to last, that doesn't give me much freedom, whether it's in the business, from the business, or because of the business. It's just not going to be there for long.
Absolutely.
So sustainability of it is there. So the key is I have to think through, how do I do this in a way that I can actually do it a piece at a time? And so if I start with one person and then I literally work through each of the 10 questions with one person, and then what I do is I start to integrate that in my communication with them, then I'm all of a sudden they start getting pretty excited. And I've had some people tell me, I've already got a good relationship with people. I can just get them to fill it out and give it to me. It's like, one of the things that I've noticed is that if you ask somebody if you give them a questionnaire and you ask them to fill it out, first of all, they'll say, wow, this person, okay, so this is the latest thing they've got. They want me to do something.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they'll do one of two things. Either they'll give you the minimum to satisfy the arrangement, to give you the minimum possible that keeps you happy or keeps you off their back, or they'll steer everything to get what they want. Well, you keep saying you won't give me this, or I want this additional equipment, or I want this something. So I'll actually steer my answers to the questions to try to advocate for what I want, that you and I have been having this sort of semi-heated discussion over the last few months. So and that happens a lot,
Yeah.
or I get everything that's wrong with existing management that I'm going to complain about laced into my questions. Okay. Whereas if I actually gave you time and I said, I'd like to have a conversation with you, and I want you to set aside, a couple hours, and have nothing there. We're going to leave phones out of the room. There's nothing that actually interrupts us. We're just going to talk about your future. First of all, how would you feel about that?
Better.
Okay. Now, some could feel better. Other people would go, yeah, I heard this one before. What's he want me to do now?
Okay.
Might actually walk in with a little
That's fair.
and so but most, a lot of times is, assuming you're dealing in a great work environment or a good work environment in the moment, then chances are they go, okay, sure, we'll do that. Is that like the stuff that you've been having me fill out each year for the performance reviews? And it's like, well, yes and no. It's not quite the same. See, because one of the things that I've always advocated for is separating performance reviews, or let's put it this way, separating salary reviews from growth, from career growth.
Mm-hmm.
You want career growth to be on a separate path from salary reviews, because otherwise they're sitting there advocating for how great they've been with the idea of maximizing their next raise. And since a lot of managers don't take time for both because they're not integrated, they are distributed.
Yeah.
You're in a situation where they try to do both things at once, and what happens is they don't get somebody's career growth. They just get lip service to that and advocacy for raises. And if I'm really hard on people, my people might not get raises. If I'm the kind of person that's like really generous with people, everybody gets raises, and it's not necessarily giving either way. It's not giving people access to growing as much as it could. So if I could actually just focus on their growth, then that's a whole different conversation. So initially, even if they don't trust it initially, they will as time goes on, if I'm genuinely interested in their professional growth. So there's
and look, this is not something you can fake at all, right?
no.
And so let's talk about this, because I think it's really important for people to understand this. If you're leading a team and you're not interested in their growth, and then you can't fake that you are. So if you're currently not interested in their growth, one of the ways that we've talked about becoming interested in their growth is integrating the fact that their growth is really the same as your growth, right?
Mhm.
Right? If you grow your people, they will deliver more value to your clients, will deliver greater profit to you. Oh, and by the way, will it help you attract better people?
Correct.
Because that's another integrated solution. That's another integrated aspect of really caring about developing a career development growth plan with each individual employee.
Yes. But I'm not just going to restrict it to the growth that helps me as
No,
the
and it can't be.
no, because then it's not true.
Yeah.
So do you want an example of a well, actually if you want, we can start digging into the question. I can show you how I lay it out and we can dig into the questions and I'll sort of talk through a couple of different scenarios. I don't have one person's growth plan in front of me because I'm not doing that.
No, no,
But
no. And
what I could do
that
is I
would
could
focus
point
the
to
conversation too much.
examples.
Yeah.
I could focus different examples of what different people have said during different types of plans. And that doesn't sort of zero, in on one person's arrangement.
Yeah, let's go through the questions.
Okay, so again, the pre-frame of the questions, the question I look at is what are the key elements for the facilitator? Okay, so it could be somebody's direct manager or somebody else on the leadership team. And so I've got a few things. I've actually got four. One is it wants to be a live interview or series of interviews, if at all possible. Now, some people said, yeah, but what if they're remote? And I said, well, if it's remote, you have to live with it, except you don't always have to live with it. In fact, as we speak, um, earlier this week, one of the co-owners of a company that I'm dealing with down in the States got on a plane on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, he actually worked through a growth plan. He's in San Diego. He actually flew to Washington State. And his premise was that he wanted to go check in on a couple of customers, and they did, in fact, check in on a couple of customers. But while he was there, he had a good half a day with one of the people that works directly with him. And so what he did was he actually took this person through the growth plan, as far as that's concerned. So he did it live, and he said it made such a big difference because this person could tell, that I was really interested in her growth, and she could tell that I was right there with her.
So, one of the things that's really important here
Yes.
is this really being interested in their growth.
Yeah.
And that is, in order to do this well, that is the thing to de-risk. So
Correct.
face to face helps solve that.
Yep. Because
But
here's
also, but also your mindset going into this, again, this is all about them. It is rule number one on this napkin for a reason, because it is all about them.
correct. And the other side of that is that the biggest gift you can give anyone is your time.
Mm.
And by actually investing my time in really learning and understanding about what you're interested in your career, all by itself, if it's done and seen to be genuine and authentic, literally, it just builds trust. And I've seen incredibly trusting arrangements where people go, you know what? Our trust is as high as it can be. It can't get higher. It's already that high. And they're like, Michael, I can't believe it. I thought our trust was as high as it could be, and it was and is. And it just got even stronger. It's fascinating. So it really makes a difference. You know what they say from a sales perspective, people don't care about how your solutions work until they realize and know that you really understand them. So if they feel understood by you, then they're interested in your solutions. Now, that doesn't just mean like being lovey-dovey or with your customers, but it means really understanding and having them feel that you understand their issues so that you're in a situation that your solutions actually have a chance of helping. Well, it's the same thing here. If somebody that works with me feels understood, that I actually get what they're really after and what they really want to grow, whether it's as part of my company or whether 2 years from now they want to move on to something, it doesn't matter. It's okay. As long as we're creating value for each other along the way, then you know what? Nobody has to be there for life for this to be okay. People are in such a shortage of, they think, oh my gosh, if I lose people, then it's not going to work. So you have to be a lifer. And if you aren't, there's going to be a big upset involved. Well, that's just not how life works these days. So you have to get past that one to make this work. To actually take a genuine interest, you have to be able to park your own agenda at the table. And I got to tell you, if you find out that them working with you doesn't work for them, wouldn't you rather know that up front? And you could help them find what does work for them, and you find somebody that actually would fit better.
Right. It's so much better to know that before 5 years go by and and nothing works out, and you're managing them the whole time because they don't want any of these things. All right. So where do we go after that?
So live interview, okay, or series meetings. In other words, if it's sometimes it's one, but sometimes you go so deep in that one question or two questions that you know what, it took an hour and a half or 2 hours there. So you book another time a few days later, and you go in. The longest I've seen people take, there was one gentleman that took three 2.5 hour meetings. The longest was 2.5. The other two were 2 hours. But literally took time and really dug in and understood where the person was coming from. And this was just after COVID was starting to settle down. And he actually didn't think that this woman was going to be a long-term part of his company. And brilliant woman. And he had relied on her before COVID for so much, but so much changed, and everybody had to, change their roles and do it the best they could. And different people had different coping styles through COVID, and some coped with it better than others. And let's just say that things started to get just an inch misaligned. But fundamentally, each of these two people was just as pure of heart, for want of a better term, and really committed to what they were originally talking about, as they always were. It's just that misunderstandings started to sort of invade the space. And so he actually took time and he really just, listened to what was there for her. And they were talking back and forth and, looking at a number of things. So taking the time to take as long as it takes to actually dig through. And then the other thing is the facilitator in these cases, okay, asks the questions and takes notes. Now, the very first question I usually get, okay, is, well, wouldn't it be more efficient if I just gave them the questions so that they'd know what to expect? Because some people are not very good at that. And it's like, absolutely not. Do not give the questions to somebody. And let me say something different about that. Absolutely not. Do not give the questions to somebody ever. It has to be me asking you. You see, then it's about the questions. It's about the questionnaire. It's not about me taking an interest in what's important to you. So frankly, the tone of how I ask my question is just as important as the verbiage. Am I actually taking a genuine interest in what's important to you, or am I not? So I've got a series of questions, and in a couple of cases, there's one question, for example, that if somebody's really kind of stumped, I'll move the question down to later. And I'll revisit it later. And I can change gears, but based on what I'm hearing from this person. And so then they really feel like it is a customized experience for them. Okay. So that is the second one. Never give these questions out in advance. Okay.
And and this is one of the things that a lot of people don't understand. And people say, hey, great leadership, great leaders are great listeners and all that kind of stuff, which is all great. The path to being a great listener is to actually be curious about the answer. So there's no way to feign that.
Right.
When you're asking the question. So when you're asking the question, be interested in the answer. Don't answer, don't listen to the answer for an opportunity to respond. Actually be interested.
Yeah, because a lot of times people are in two modes, talking and waiting to talk.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help. The other side of it is, if you don't have a genuine interest in the future of this person, okay, remember one of the things we said in Hire Smart was, when we talked about that, was only hire potential partners and close allies. Now, does that mean they have to become a partner? No. But if I wouldn't be proud to actually have this person be there either sharing money or being somebody that I really rely on closely, if I can't see that possibility of growing, that person growing into that, then don't have them on my team. So if there's anybody I don't care enough about to actually really be interested in their growth, just don't have them on your team. And it doesn't mean dump them today, but it does mean, help them find what's next for them, and then go find somebody that you actually do care about, because frankly, those are the people that'll give more and that will fit for your environment. And this person that doesn't necessarily, you don't care about, let them go find a place where somebody does.
Yeah.
Because that's more fair to them than keeping them in a job.
Without question.
All right. So that is a factor. Okay.
Okay. Number 3.
The third thing is to take time to listen, to dig in, and to really understand what the person wants. In other words, what's really important to them on their terms, not inside some constraints based on what you need. This is the one conversation in their career, okay, that it's all about them. It really is all about them. Not all about them within your confines, because what if what the best thing is for them to do is to actually go be a musician, and there's a way that you can actually help them do that, and maybe they need to learn over the next 6 to 9 months different things, and it's like, okay, well, while you're learning that, if you can help me on this stuff, I'll help you on that stuff, and by the time you're ready, let's get you into that type of thing, and in the meantime, you can help me find the person that would actually do better long-term here. I mean, anything can be sorted out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you have the conversation. So
If you have the
taking the time.
conversation, if you don't have the
Yeah.
conversation, then not so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number four.
Number four, if you run short on time, book a follow-up meeting. Do not cut the process short. Now, I saw one guy who actually did this, and he had this incredible thing, and he got to question number 6. He'd done 5 questions. He got to question number 6, and he said, we've run out of time. I know you have a meeting, and we tried to put this in. I'll tell you what, let's continue tomorrow. And in the meantime, here's the other 5 questions so you can actually think it through in advance, and we can see what we can do. It was fascinating. He said, the next day I worked with this person, and this young man, he said all the trust was gone. It changed to being about the questions. And he said, I actually had to spend almost 2 hours reestablishing the trust we'd already built. And it took a while to do that. And I didn't do anything to offend them. The questions are not offensive. There's nothing about them, but it turned into the questions and not about him. And he said, I'll never give up questions again. I don't want to have to go through that. And you know what? That person deserves more than that. And I'm like, good observations. It's like you could tell that he was really adopting this whole notion, right?
Yeah.
So really, don't cut that process short. That's the fourth thing. So those are the key elements for facilitators. And so now I'm ready to share the questions.
Okay. So the 4 steps to the ground rules. Now we're getting into the questions.
Right. So here, and there's 10 of them. Okay. And the first one is what I call the 10-year question. Okay. So if you think of the next 10 years in your career, okay, what would you want to be able to say that you achieved over that decade to have successful growth, both personally and professionally, over that time span? So really, if we're sitting here 10 years from now, what do you want to be able to say about your career? How did you grow personally? How did you grow professionally? What kind of role are you in? What size of company are you in? What have you accomplished? What's gone on for you? And I ask both personally and professionally. These are people that already work with me. Okay. What I find is it's not that hard to actually have them share whatever's there for them personally. With some younger people, they might, well, I want to buy a house, or we're in the process of, we just got married and we'd like to have a couple of kids, or want to do this or that, or, I could see ourselves moving closer to where my wife's parents live. Okay, excellent. And how do you see yourself now professionally? How do you see yourself growing in your career? When I had one person who had just taken on a position as a sales leader, okay, within their firm. And she wasn't very old. I mean, she's 30 years old, but she'd just taken a position as a sales leader, and the organization was about 5 million in revenue. And she said, well, I'd like to be a C-level executive within the next decade. So by the time I'm 40, I'd love to be a C-level executive in a 50 million operation, not a 5 million operation. So I'd love it, whether it's this organization that grows that much, or if it's not this organization, that I grow enough that I'd actually be able to get that type of position. Now, I don't know whether I'm gonna or not. I mean, there's a lot that'll change in the next decade, but right now, I'd love to see myself as the chief sales officer or chief marketing officer, somewhere in there. So, a C-level executive, and, predominantly my notion is with regards to sales. I said, great. Okay. And we talk about, well, what would that look like? And what are the types of things? And tell me about the organization a little bit. And she gave her permission just to kind of blue sky what was going on as far as that's concerned. Now, she'd never thought of that before. She was just excited to be in the new position that she got, so she had a couple of people that she was, accountable for to support them in terms of their growth and stuff. But this really allowed her to grow. And it was interesting because, when I talked to her later, because I was mentoring her, supporting her, and one of the things I would do is I'd say, okay, so am I talking to you today, or am I talking to this budding C-level executive? She said, oh, well, the budding C-level executive. I said, well, if I was the budding C-level executive, well, let me ask you this question. If you were a budding C-level executive, how would you take on this issue? And she'd go,
You
well,
know what's so good about these questions is you're really activating them to just respond. And sometimes it's this sort of like unconscious response. It's this desire, wish, dream that's under the layer that just pops out. And that's so these are well crafted questions.
now that said, sometimes people just have no idea. And if somebody has no idea, I move this question and I say, well, I'll tell you what, let's come back to it later. Let's not worry about it right now. And I make it number 9. I literally put it before number 10. Okay. So
Okay.
it's the second last question. And again, this is the purpose of this question really is to support the employee to actually just consider their future and just at the level of possibilities, though, because nobody's got it nailed down. Okay. And so, really allow them to explore possibilities and see what's in line with where they see their career heading as far as that's concerned. And I've had people say, I'd really like to learn this particular, what I'm doing now. And then what I'd love to do is to actually open my own business. Really?
Mm.
What would you open the business in? Well, this one aspect of this. I said, well, this company doesn't do that right now. And they said, no, but here's what I was thinking is if I really grow and I create enough value here, they'll actually probably want to support me because I can actually build that leg. And so I might be the owner or a co-owner of that division of this business. Interesting. So they're already lining up mergers and joint ventures and things like different people will go in different directions, right? And really just sort of giving them permission to explore what would success in your career really look like. And this is their chance to think big. And so if somebody's really struggling, that's why I will put it down later. And then all the rest of the questions actually support getting clear on the way things are now, which makes it easier to answer that question down the road if they can't answer it now. For somebody who can't answer it now, then it's awesome. But if they can't answer it now, then we have an opportunity to actually go to the next step.
All right. So let's go to the next question.
Next question. Okay, so next question, coming back to today, okay, what are the job activities that you do currently that give you energy? So I want to look from the perspective of what gives somebody energy and what drains their energy. So number 2 is, what are the job activities that you currently do that give you energy? Okay, everybody's got job parts that they love, job parts that they loathe, and everything in the middle is like, meh. So the key is what are the ones that the ones that you love are usually the ones that give you energy. So tell me which of the activities you really enjoy, which gives you energy, and people are pretty good about coming up with that. That's a very easy question for you to ask. What gives you energy? You see, energy is all over the place, and it's not hard to see, not hard to feel. Okay, we know when we're having a high energy day or if our energy is really lacking, if we're tired, or we know. We just don't talk about it a lot. But I tell you, if you can access it, you start to get clues as to what are the things that would make a difference. Which leads, of course, to question number 3, which is what are the job activities that drain you? Now, there's a difference between this question and what drains you. If I say what drains you, 8 times out of 10, I'll get conflict as the answer. If I say what are the job activities that drain you, I'll get actual job activities. I really enjoy connecting with people. It's one of the things that gives me energy. What sucks my energy? Admin, having to fill out my timesheet. So doing this or somebody else, it's like, that's not the issue at all. Having to actually deal with customers directly, really. Or, I'm really good at solving problems with and through other people. When I'm actually tasked with a bunch of tedious stuff myself, it just sucks the life out of me. Or whatever happens to be there. People are pretty good at that one just as well as they are at what gives them energy. So that's question number 3.
Love it.
Question 4. So Govind,
Michael.
what's your superpower? Now, when you think of that question, what comes to mind?
What am I really good at?
Yeah.
But really good at.
And did something come up?
For me, I couldn't get to one by itself
If you
quickly.
had to pick one. Not that I'm going to put you on tape on an international platform where everybody's going to get to hear what you're uniquely good at. I would never do that to you.
No, you wouldn't do that to me. I do that to myself.
But let's pretend I would.
Well, I'd say my superpower is genuinely helping people distill wisdom to something brief, right? Even their own superpower, helping them understand their superpower, helping them win ultimately.
How cool is that?
It's pretty cool.
See, and if somebody goes, well, what do you mean by superpower? I don't know. You know, I mean, Superman could fly and all, blah, 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 faster than a speeding bullet, all that stuff. Um, but so I'd say, well, if you're not sure what a superpower is, something that you're really, really good at that gives you energy, but that's like the best thing. It's you in your sweet spot. When you're operating in your sweet spot, what would that be?
Mhm.
Where you're able to make the most of a difference. And people usually tend to come up with something. Okay. Now, here's the question I have. Did you notice that I paused? Actually, probably a little too long to be a little theatrical because, I tried.
This is
But I
cute.
would pause and I just really, really get present with the person. And then I just very quietly ask the question
Mm.
and allows them to sit back and it allows them to kind of think so that they actually can reflect on that question. Okay.
And using their name is really important in that sentence too, in that question,
Absolutely.
because your people's names are significant. And
Yeah.
saying, well, Govin, pause, has effect. And I think it certainly got my attention as being something significant. So I liked it. It was really good.
Yeah. Now let's say I do actually at some point get through everybody on my teams and I actually understand, we built a growth plan for each of the people that we're involved with. That's fine. Um, then I pull together a project team and it's got 4 people on it. Guess how we actually start off the project team meeting?
Everybody's superpower.
Everybody's superpower. So each person says, this is the superpower that this is what you can count on me for. I will bring this superpower to the table. And we also talk about the kryptonite. Okay, so the next question is, what's your kryptonite? I mean, even Superman had weakness, and the weakness was based in kryptonite. So the question is, what's your kryptonite? What's an area where it just sucks the life out of you? Like if you just, you know what? If the subject comes up, you just want to change the subject.
Uh, I hate chasing people for things. Anything.
Yeah, so that'll be your kryptonite.
Like
So
micromanaging, like the people following up, hate following up.
yeah. So what that tells me, for example, with you as a manager, I would probably, if I was actually hiring for a role to support you, I would look for somebody who's more self-initiating rather than somebody that needs to sort of be led, because chances are you get frustrated and you just start telling them to do stuff and they just sort of give up and just do stuff, because the more you do that, the more they'll actually respond in kind. You probably don't do as well with more junior people that don't have that level of initiative than you do with somebody, whether they're young or old, who does have that level of initiative.
Yeah.
And so again, just in line. So knowing your superpower and knowing your kryptonite actually both are quite useful for different reasons as far as that's concerned. So I asked them about that, and then it gives the other thing is because Superman also had kryptonite involved. Okay, because Superman wasn't perfect. What happens is it's okay for me to not be perfect either. And then the next question that I go when I move beyond that, number 6 is, what are the things that help with the job? In other words, your environment, tools, resources, processes, people, relationships, equipment. What are some of the things that you find that actually help you with your job? And people quite often, if I give them that kind of a list, they'll jump on something or they might jump on a couple of things. Actually, the relationships we've got, the mentored support I'm getting is just amazing. Or the software we've got is like really makes a big difference. We've got the advanced software now and it's making a big. So what are they telling me? They're telling me what are the structures that make it easy for them to give their best. I want to know this because again, if I'm looking at an organization that's constantly outstripping its structures as it grows, I want to know what are the structures that people rely on and really appreciate that help them bring their best. Because if that structure gets stripped out, I got to find a different way to put it back in so that they actually still feel supported. So it's not just about that, but it's also about really understanding what they use and how they use it as far as that's concerned. So you get their ideas as far as that's concerned. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense.
Okay. And then the next question is, what are the things that make the job harder? Now, I could list the same list, but I don't here. Some people, just by inference, go to the same list. For other people, if there is something like conflict or there's something that really bothers them, what are the things that make the job harder? This is a place where they can actually share that.
Because you haven't given them the bandwidth and restriction.
I have not given them the restriction here. I absolutely gave it at job activities that give you energy versus drain your energy, but I'm not giving it here. But there's an inference when I say, what helped with the job and what makes the job harder. It sounds like I'm doing two sides of that coin, and I am, except by not putting in the limiters. If somebody really does have an issue with something like conflict resolution or being in difficult situations or something, then it has a chance to show up. And the trust through this whole process continues to build. Okay. So that's why I put that there. Now, 8 and 9 are similar, but it's interesting to see the differences. So number 8 is, what are your favorite aspects of the role? And then I don't just stop there. I always say behind it, things you enjoy where you add the most value. So what I'm doing is favorite aspects of the role. I got to tell you, before I added that, things you enjoy that add the most value, you know what the number one answer was?
The pizza cart?
Almost the summer barbecue. So what are your favorite aspects of the summer barbecue? It's amazing. Where if I say things that you enjoy where you add the most value, they go, oh, remember, this is a work environment. My job is to support them in their professional growth. I can't support them in their professional growth, whether at the pizza cart or at the barbecue. And we want to have those and they're wonderful things. But remember, my commitment is to their growth and development. So I want the question to give me access to supporting them in their growth and development. So I absolutely say things you enjoy that add the most value. And that thing with value, it really clicks. I really like giving this value, or I really like doing that, or something like so.
Or mentoring younger team members, or whatever, right? Like this is where you also start to get these integrated opportunities in development, right? This is great. I love it.
If you're doing it with a manager, quite often I get troubleshooting when people are stuck. I really love helping them solve problems.
Mm.
And then I'll go into another question behind that saying, so how do you do that? And then you get a sense of whether this is just a person who does it for the person or whether this is a person who really enjoys bringing out the best in somebody else, because it tells you where they're at in terms of the continuum as well.
Yeah, and you talked about superhero capes earlier on, but we don't want our managers to put on a superhero cape and solve everybody's problem all the time.
No.
Come in as the hero.
In fact, one of the things that I've heard about leadership, one of the best analogies I have was this notion of a tofu leader. Kind of bland, and they don't stand out on their own, but they go with lots of things and they're really good for you.
That's really good.
Yeah, so the tofu leader, I mean, those are our quiet superstars, right?
Yeah.
So that's number 8. Number 9 is, in light of all this, what are your aspirations for the future? In other words, what would you like to be doing and contributing as you grow in your career? So it sort of takes the present tense thing about what you enjoy that adds most value, and what it does is it starts to head it down to the future. Okay, so in light of all this, what are your favorite aspirations for the future? In other words, what would you like to be doing and contributing as you grow in your career? Now, remember, what would you like to be doing would be all about, like, what would I like to be doing might be about me, but what I'd like to be doing and contributing is all about others. And frankly, people tend to give their best when they're about others. Okay, they're not limited by their own needs or desires. They're looking for what the other person needs as far as us. So you have an other centric, perspective, and that's where you get the strongest teams, as we'll discover when we play with teams. So that's number 9. Now, remember, number 9 became number 8 if I actually couldn't answer the 10-year question. But you see that I've done enough of a deep dive in terms of what are the things that they like, what are the things that drain their energy, what are the things that that their superpower, their kryptonite, all that kind of stuff. What makes the job easier? What makes what helps? What makes it harder? And where do they see themselves contributing now? So I'll tell you what. So now let's look at 10 years out. What are your thoughts? I mean, if you had to take a look, what do you think? As far as that's concerned? So I might, just talk to them about that and then see where it goes. Or let's assume I've already got it, like I did with this young woman who actually said she wanted to be a C-level executive in a 50 million organization. And then here comes number 10. In light of what you want over the next decade, and in light of all the various things that we've talked about so far, here's my next question. What are the skills, experiences, or new perspectives that you think you're going to need to learn or develop or refine over the next 3 years? Okay, so that you really, at the end of 3 years, you've got a really solid foundation for your, as progress towards your 10-year objectives. So what do you need to learn over the next 3 years so that you've got a great foundation to actually achieve the next 10-year objective? And then they might come up with one or two things, and they typically do. But one of the things that I want to do is expand. You see, if I know, so for example, if I know what a C-level executive in sales looks like, or if I wanted to, quite often we get people that want to be the president of a company. And, in a previous episode, we talked about what are the different areas of accountability. And then I'd say, so, would one of the things you'd want, let's say I deal with my president, of a larger company, and say, so they might say, well, I want to learn this or I want to learn that. And it's like, okay, so how about strategy? Do you think you'd need to learn strategy at a whole new level? And they might say, yeah, I think I might need that. Okay, so would that make a difference for you? I think it would. I'm pretty good at strategy already, but you're right. If I'm going to be at that much larger a company, I'd probably need that. And say, so what about, what about this whole notion of an ecosystem? I mean, we're participating in that now. Is that something you've had a chance to really explore? So, well, no, not really. I'm just discovering it. Okay. Is that something that you think would be important for you to learn? And then they'd say, I think so. Or somebody else might say, no, I don't need that. No problem. It's got to be their choice. They have to say it. But this is the one area where you want to suggest and make observation. Now, not just to tie them to your type of job, but when you're looking at the type of role they want, honestly, what are the things that you think they might need to learn over the course of the next 3 years to be on track for that 10-year objective?
Mm.
So let's say you wanted to be an international thought leader over the course of the next decade, and assisting people to really distill things, and really get the wisdom that's available so that they could move their businesses, their families, their communities, their lives forward at a whole different level. The question I look at, and you're already an accomplished guy, so the question I look at is what are the things you think you might need to learn or want to learn that would actually help you do that? And you might say, well, speaking to hundreds and thousands. Right now I speak to up to a couple of hundred, but I haven't really spoken with 10,000 people. Okay. Is that a priority? Well, you know what? I think it's one of the things I might need to learn, or whatever it is that you come up with, how about long-term vision? To what extent is that going to be needed for you to get that? In other words, you'll come up with what you come up with, but then I'll look and see what else would this person need? Now, what am I doing? First of all, I'm really helping them flesh out things that they might need over the next 3 years for that 10. But the other thing is I want them learning at a level that's larger than their current job. Because if what I'm growing is larger than my current job, I can always fit the job inside the growth plan.
Yeah.
Some people,
And effectively can't you just ask them even things like, okay, so this is what you just said. How do we integrate that learning with what you're doing now? Can't
yeah, I
you
don't
just
have to
ask
do
them?
that. I don't even have to do that. If I do that, they might take it off in some different direction.
Mm.
They might say, well, I need to do this. It's like, okay, well, I just got into a brick wall. Whereas
Yeah.
what I would do is I would say, so right now your job is this. Tell you what, as we're working together, I know that this is really important to you. See, I'm not going to actually, if I say, how do I integrate it into your job? There it is. I told you it was all about the company,
Got it.
or I get your agenda. And if you've got an agenda that doesn't have anything to do with the company, then I get that. Okay. Whereas if I look at that, I say, well, currently this is the role that you've got. I'll tell you what, as we work together in how you're doing your job, because I mean, you're always learning and growing, why don't we set it up so if we've got opportunities to hit one of these 7 or 8 items, because quite often we come up with 6, 8, 9 items, but we actually integrate them together. So we say, okay, so when we're doing this part of the job, why don't I do, like when we talk about thinking strategically, I'll tell you what, next time we do one of those, let's just spend a little time and see how that actually has strategic implications for the larger elements that this particular client is looking at. And we can sort of dance with that. Is that something, would you like to use the parts of your job to help you do that? And they're like, yeah. Okay, well, let's work on that together as we go. And so rather than a quarterly and a 6 month and an annual, this is just an ongoing active dialogue, but it's always tied to their growth plan. And their growth plan is what I'm using. And the job are the tool, the elements of the job are the tools that I use to deliver the growth plan. So I never have to talk really about the job except integrating it with their growth plan. Now all my conversations are about them, and an ecosystem really is about their growth, and it's about, it's got to be for everybody. And again, if you give this lip service, it doesn't work. We know that. But at the same time, if I'm honestly listening for how I can actually support their growth and use their job to support them with their growth, then we're all set. Now, if I've got them in the wrong job, I'll discover that too. Because the truth is, if I got them in the wrong job, it's not going to work anyway.
Yeah, that's
So I
for sure.
learned so much here, and it takes a couple of cuts, 2 or 3 cuts to actually get this one right.
Love
So
it.
those are the 10 steps that we talk about. And from there, I can now integrate them, okay, as far as that's concerned. And again, the key is the questions have to be asked with general interest or genuine interest, sorry. And then acknowledged with like really whatever your authentic feelings are about that. If someone says, well, I really want to do this, and you go, really? That sounds really creepy. Tell me about that. I mean, if I'm authentic with them, I can just say what's really there for me, and don't be offensive about it. But at the same time, they're like, yeah, I know, it's creepy. Isn't that cool? It's like, sure, let's go with cool.
Yeah,
Not myself, but it's like, this is your plan, not mine. Whatever it takes to support you, I will do.
that's amazing. All right, so we've gotten through train and grow your people, and this is the final piece of that, which is building or developing a career growth plan. And there are 10 important questions after the 4 ground rules. Michael, this
Well,
was
I do have
amazing.
another question for you.
Of course you do.
I know this is a longer one, but here's the other side of it. What are the chances, whether it's 2 hours or 4 hours or even 6 hours, that you can nail somebody's 10 years? What are your thoughts?
I don't think you can miss. For people who are not familiar with these concepts, living at the level of possibility all the way through the questions, the way the questions are put together, the way you've constructed the questions are really designed to access their unconscious mind in support of the answer. And you're activating it early and then reinforcing it with a direction, which then gives them access to their hopes, their dreams, their wishes over the course of the conversation. You're going to get a lot of clarity. A
I
lot.
totally agree. I agree. But here, what I'm saying is no matter how much clarity I get, I'm not going to build their 10-year plan in a half a day.
No, you're not. But
Like not
you're
even
going
a
to get a
hope.
lot of clarity on what's important to them.
Correct. But guess what that does? See, 90% of the purpose of this is to reinforce and further build trust.
Correct.
The other 10% is about starting to set a direction, but also it's about having a common language based on what's important to them to continue the communication as we go. Because I need an integrative result. I don't want to be doing their growth and the job. I want them together. So if I talk about their growth, and the job comes along with the growth, we're set. But the trust is so high that they know that I'm actually doing the growth. They know they're expected to do the job. Of course, that's what they're paid for. But I got to tell you, the trust is really strong when that's tied to their growth, but their growth on their terms for what's important to them genuinely, not just what I'm claiming is important to them while I sort of contort them into what I want them to be.
And here's something that's really important as part of this, and I think that this is where people use personality profiling as a
Mhm.
proxy for this. all the time. Oh, I know what personality they are, so I can use these words to motivate them or manipulate them. And that's really what they're doing. What you're doing and what this framework supports is a much more deep, trusting connection that allows for an integrated model to exist, allows for the ecosystem to exist, and permits the kind of freedom we're talking about, right? Like, we're not talking about, oh, I just want to be able to take my weekends off. We're talking about freedom in the business to do the work you want to do. We're talking about freedom from the business so you can get away and live your life, and freedom because of the business so you can enjoy aspects of your life, family life, other things that have nothing to do with the business at all. And that's what we're talking about here. This is not standard fare. This is for people who really want freedom.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Michael.